They were once the Emperor's chosen eyes, the hand that reached into shadows to root out corruption before it spread. But in the labyrinth of the Imperium, where truth is a shifting mirage and loyalty is never certain, even an Inquisitor can falter when an oath-bound servant of terror strays into forbidden knowledge or dares to question the machinery of faith. They are cast into the abyss with a single word burned upon their soul: Renegade. What follows is no longer the life of a hunter, but the hunted, a descent into paranoia, exile, and madness, where every ally is a traitor waiting to betray, and every prayer echoes unanswered through the silence of the void. If this descent into darkness grips you, if the thought of one man or woman cast adrift from the Emperor's light chills your veins, then stand with this channel. Like this tale, share it with your fellow lore seekers, and subscribe so the stories of the Grimdark never vanish into the warp. The story of a renegade does not begin in shadows. It begins in the light, or at least in the belief of light. The Inquisitor's path is carved from fire and steel, forged in trials so merciless that only the most unbreakable of minds endure. From the first breath of initiation, the oath is branded upon their soul, to seek out heresy, to excise it wherever it festers, and to serve as the Emperor's gaze in a galaxy consumed by lies. It is not a mantle willingly worn, but one that suffocates, pressing down like the endless void beyond the hull of a starship. An Inquisitor stands apart from all others in the Imperium. Even generals bow their heads, their vast armies waiting upon a single word. Even governors tremble, fearing the seal of authority pressed against parchment, its black wax heavier than any bolt around. That power is intoxicating, and it is isolating. Few can comprehend the burden of command when every decision can consign entire worlds to fire or salvation. To command the hammer of the Emperor is to know both divinity and damnation, sometimes in the same breath. Yet behind the mask of authority lies a human soul, frail and imperfect. They kneel in the chambers of the Ordos, chanting words of loyalty until their voice breaks, vowing to burn away all doubt. But doubt is patient. It lingers in the quiet hours, between the screams of the accused and the rattling of chains in dark cells. It creeps into the heart as the Inquisitor reads yet another report of famine, of planets bled dry in the name of tithes, of innocents executed for the crime of suspicion. The oath is supposed to be unshakable. Instead, it begins to weigh like chains, dragging them further into silence with each passing year. The Emperor's light is eternal, or so the preachers say. But to those who bear the weight of his judgment, the flame can feel more like a furnace, burning not just heresy, but the ones sworn to fight it. And somewhere, deep within, a thought stirs, fragile, blasphemous, and utterly damning. What if we are not saving humanity at all? What if we are only prolonging its suffering? The thought cannot be spoken aloud. Even to whisper it within the privacy of a sealed chamber risks betrayal. For the Ordos are a nest of serpents who watch one another as closely as they hunt the heretics outside. The Inquisition does not forgive doubt. A faltering voice, a questioning glance, a hesitation when signing a death warrant. Any of these can be enough for another Inquisitor to brand one unfit, to summon the interrogators and strip flesh from bone until confession spills like blood. And so, the Renegade's story germinates not in rebellion, but in silence. They keep their questions buried beneath layers of iron discipline, continuing the rites, reciting the catechisms, carrying out the purges as expected. To the outside eye, nothing changes. They still stride through manufactorum corridors with retinues of acolytes trailing in their wake, still sit in judgment beneath the glow of lumen strips as vox grills announce sentences of death. They still wear the rosette of office like a weapon, and worlds still quake at its sight. But within, something begins to fracture. Every executioner's bolt gun blast echoes longer in the mind. Every firestorm ordered upon a Hive world leaves an ember of unease. The stories told by survivors, if any are left alive to tell them, creep into the Inquisitor's thoughts at night, voices crying from the edge of sleep. They know that the Emperor demands sacrifice, that his will is carried upon rivers of blood. Yet the rivers never cease. Each campaign, each investigation, each purge is followed by another, then another, and the tally of the dead grows so vast that even an Inquisitor cannot keep count. There is no single moment where loyalty shatters. It is not a lightning strike. It is erosion, the slow wearing away of faith against the grindstone of reality. And as the years stretch into decades, the oath that once burned with holy fire becomes something else, a scar that aches with every memory of what has been done in his name. The galaxy never rests. New heresies rise, new threats crawl from the warp, new whispers of corruption spread like plague across the stars. And the Inquisitor, once a blade of unyielding certainty, begins to see not victory in their actions, but futility. The oath demands endless sacrifice. The oath consumes all. The oath does not end. And so, somewhere deep within the soul, where prayer once dwelled, the first shadow takes root. That shadow festers in silence, unspoken but undeniable. At first, it takes the shape of hesitation, a flicker of doubt, before condemning 1,000 lives with the stroke of a stylus across parchment. To the retinue, the hesitation is imperceptible, masked by the iron voice of command. But the Inquisitor feels it, a fracture in the rhythm of judgment, a tremor in the pulse of faith. The oath demands swiftness, certainty, and purity of will. Yet each verdict begins to carry ghosts. The condemned do not remain faceless. Their pleas linger in memory. The cracked voice of a worker accused of consorting with Xenos because he spoke a dialect too foreign. The tears of a mother dragged into chains for hiding a son who bore the mark of mutation. In the echo of such moments, the Inquisitor begins to see not heresy but humanity. Still, duty compels them forward. They know well the fate of hesitation. Those who falter are themselves branded suspect. And so they bury the memory of every execution beneath layers of ritual. The incense burns thicker. The litanies are recited longer. Every chamber reeks of sanctity so overpowering, it almost drowns out the guilt. Almost. The paradox grows unbearable. To question is heresy, but to obey without question is to slaughter without end. The weight of both paths presses down like the gravity of a dying star. In the silence between orders, in the quiet moments when the rosette is hidden away, the Inquisitor begins to wonder whether the Emperor truly demands such blood, or whether it is only the Imperium's endless machinery grinding lives into ash. No answer comes, only silence. The Astronomicon still blazes in the warp, the priests still thunder their sermons, the regiments still march. Yet to the Inquisitor, that silence grows louder than any hymn. It is in that silence that the seed of rebellion germinates. Not as defiance, not yet, but as a question that refuses to die. And from questions, inevitably, come choices. The choices begin subtly, almost invisibly. A name left off a death warrant, a heretical text quietly archived instead of burned. A suspected mutant spared transport to the pyres and instead abandoned in the Underhive, where survival is punishment enough. Each act is small, imperceptible to the Ordos, yet to the Inquisitor, they are tectonic shifts, decisions made not by creed, but by conscience. At first, the guilt is overwhelming. Every deviation feels like standing upon the edge of an executioner's block, waiting for the blade to fall. Paranoia becomes constant. The gaze of every acolyte feels too sharp, every vox transmission too carefully worded. Was that a question in their tone or merely habit? Did they linger too long in the archives, searching for proof? The Inquisitor knows the Inquisition eats its own with the same hunger it devours the galaxy. To slip once is to risk damnation. To slip twice is to invite the stake. Yet over time, hesitation gives way to grim resolve. The small choices accumulate, weaving a hidden path of defiance beneath the surface of obedience. The Inquisitor's mask remains flawless in public. The interrogations are still brutal, the purges still ordered, the sermons still delivered with iron authority. But behind that mask, a different ledger is being written. One measured not in victories, but in lives quietly spared. Still, the oath does not forgive. Each act of mercy is also an act of betrayal. Each spared life risks contagion, corruption, or worse, and the Inquisitor knows it. Doubt gnaws at every decision, tearing at the fragile justifications whispered in the dark. Perhaps they are not saving anyone. Perhaps they are only damning themselves. And so, beneath the weight of power and the silence of faith, the oath that once blazed like fire has become something colder, heavier. It is no longer a vow that uplifts. It is a chain, binding them between two impossible truths: obedience that kills without end, or rebellion that may consume all. This is the crucible where a renegade is born, not in defiance, not yet, but in the unbearable tension between duty and conscience. And sooner or later, the chain must break. The breaking does not come with ceremony. It comes in silence, in the still air of an archive chamber, where the dust of 1,000 dead scribes clings to forgotten tomes. The Inquisitor stands alone, a lumen strip buzzing weakly overhead, its pale light catching on the edges of parchments sealed with wax centuries old. Here lie the forbidden words, the sealed confessions, the records that even the Adeptus Administratum dare not catalogue. The first transgression is simple. They read, not the summaries, not the sanctioned extracts carefully cleansed of dangerous thought, but the raw texts themselves. Accounts of purges where entire hives were burned for the crime of a single cult. Reports of regiments bled dry, sacrificed not to defeat the enemy, but to delay them long enough for retreat. Pages upon pages of suffering, inked with the same authority they now wield. The words sear deeper than any brand. It is not heresy they encounter in those pages, but truth. And truth is the most dangerous heresy of all. Every line erodes the certainty they once carried like a weapon. The Imperium does not save humanity. It consumes it piece by piece, feeding its endless hunger with blood and faith. And in this revelation, the oath begins to rot. From that moment, the Inquisitor cannot return to ignorance. Each new assignment is colored by what they have read. When they look upon a planetary governor pleading for mercy, they no longer see corruption. They see another victim of the machine. When they order soldiers into battle, they hear the echo of past reports, of men and women thrown to slaughter not for victory, but for delay. The words linger, haunting, until every decision feels poisoned. Yet still, the rosette binds them. Authority is a blade they cannot lay down. To abandon it would be to reveal their doubt, and doubt is death. And so, they continue, investigating, interrogating, condemning, while inside, the fracture spreads. But fractures never remain hidden forever. The first to notice are not the ordos, but the retinue. Acolytes trained to obey begin to sense hesitation. A sanctioned psyker in their service whispers of turbulence in the master's aura. A loyal interrogator wonders why a suspect is spared the pyre. Rumors gather like storm clouds, invisible yet suffocating. And the Inquisitor, though armored in authority, begins to feel hunted, not yet by the Inquisition, but by their own shadow. The shadow clings closer with every passing day. Once, the Inquisitor's retinue would march in lockstep, their loyalty unquestioned, their fear a shield sharper than any blade. Now each glance carries weight. The interrogator's eyes linger too long, as though measuring the distance between devotion and suspicion. The psyker shifts uneasily when near, muttering prayers too fervent, too frequent. Even the scribes, their backs bent beneath data slates, seem to record with unusual precision, as though the smallest hesitation might one day serve as evidence. Paranoia seeps in like water through cracked stone. The Inquisitor begins to wonder if these companions are truly their own, or if they were placed by rival ordos to observe, to test, to wait for weakness. The Inquisition is infamous for such games. After all, who better to catch a traitor than another of their kind? Each question left unspoken festers, until the silence of a chamber becomes unbearable, haunted by the thought that every ally is a spy. It is during this time that the Inquisitor makes their first irreversible choice. On a frontier world where whispers of chaos cults spread, they discover not a cabal of heretics, but a congregation of starving workers, their bodies broken by tithes that stripped their planet bare. By strict creed, their suffering is irrelevant. Hunger breeds desperation. Desperation breeds heresy, and heresy must be crushed before it spreads. The retinue waits for the order, hands poised on bolters and flamers, but the words do not come. Instead, the Inquisitor dismisses the retinue, claiming further investigation is required, and in secret, ensures that the ringleaders are hidden away rather than executed. Food shipments are redirected. The cult that never was is quietly dissolved. Official records speak of fire and purges, but in truth, mercy has been granted. It is a single act of defiance, one that saves thousands, but damns the Inquisitor's soul. For in choosing compassion, they have broken the oath that binds them to terror. The Emperor demands purity, not pity, and once the line is crossed, it cannot be uncrossed. The retinue whispers of irregularities. The psyker reports troubling shadows in the master's mind. And deep within the Ordos, where rivals sift through fragments of rumor, the first file is opened under a name that will one day become a curse. Renegade. The word is never spoken aloud, not yet. It lingers in sealed reports and encrypted Vox transmissions, whispered in the margins of data slates by cautious scribes who dare not draw attention to their suspicions. But the Inquisitor feels it, as surely as if the syllables had been carved into their flesh. Every time the rosette is raised, every time a governor bows, there is the gnawing awareness that elsewhere, another Inquisitor may be sharpening their blade. Preparing the warrant of execution, the paranoia becomes ritual. Vox channels are cycled constantly, cipher codes rewritten daily, acolytes rotated and tested without explanation. The Inquisitor tells themselves it is necessary, that vigilance is the only shield against betrayal. Yet beneath that justification lies the truth. They no longer trust anyone, not even those sworn to their service. The interrogator who once delivered confessions with zeal is now kept at arm's length. The Psyker is watched more closely than the prisoners they examine. The simple act of sharing a meal with one's retinue becomes a test of loyalty, each word weighed like a blade at the throat. And still, the missions continue. The Imperium does not rest, and neither can its servants. A transport ship carries them to a mining world where whispers of demonic possession spread through the tunnels. The governor begs for aid, his Vox message trembling with fear. The retinue expects the familiar rhythm. Swift judgment, brutal cleansing, the Emperor's wrath made manifest. But the Inquisitor hesitates. The reports are vague, the evidence thin. It reeks not of corruption, but of desperation. Workers crushed beneath quotas, hallucinations born of exhaustion and the thin, poisonous air of the mines. Were it any other Inquisitor, the solution would be immediate. Fire, purges, the cleansing roar of Prometheum. But the Renegade's mind turns to mercy. Perhaps the governor seeks to mask incompetence with claims of heresy. Perhaps there are no demons at all. The decision is made in silence. Instead of purging, they order supplies redirected, medica teams dispatched, tithes temporarily reduced. To the world below, it is salvation. To the retinue, it is heresy. When the interrogator asks, voice sharp with suspicion, why the flames were withheld, the Inquisitor offers no answer. Only a glare, cold and final, that silences further questions. But the damage is done. A seed of doubt has been planted in the hearts of their own servants. And seeds, once planted, always grow. In the stillness of their chamber, the Inquisitor kneels before a shrine, the light of the Emperor's image flickering across their face. Words of prayer leave their lips, but faith does not follow. For the first time, the silence that answers feels not like absence, but judgment. And in that judgment, the Inquisitor realizes a truth more damning than any forbidden text. They are already lost. There is always a moment when silence becomes action. For the Inquisitor, that moment arrives not in battle, nor in the smoke of interrogation chambers, but in the quiet of a forgotten archive, far from the echo of sermons. Here, the walls are lined with data slates wrapped in dust, their seals marked not with the purity of the ecclesiarchy, but with the jagged sigils of restriction. Only those with unquestionable authority may enter. Only those with the Emperor's trust may read. They tell themselves they are here for duty. They tell themselves the sealed records may hold answers to the corruption they hunt. But deep within, beneath layers of self-deception, they know the truth. They are seeking confirmation. Proof that their doubts are not madness. Proof that the Imperium is as broken as their thoughts whisper it to be. The first text is a chronicle of the Great Crusade, stripped of its glory, reduced to cold, unadorned detail. It speaks not of shining heroes, but of compliance by extermination. Worlds that resisted were not enlightened, but burned. Peoples who bent the knee too slowly were cast into chains or slaughtered outright. There are no hymns in these pages, no soaring verses of triumph, only the cold, merciless tally of death. The Inquisitor feels the words sear like a brand. This is not the Imperium as the ecclesiarchy proclaims it. This is conquest. Empire built not on faith, but on fire and blood. For the first time, the mask slips. They do not close the record in horror. They continue reading. One text becomes two, two become 10. Accounts of the Horus heresy, told not in sermons, but in fractured testimony, where loyalty and treachery are blurred beyond recognition. Reports of purges ordered not against traitors, but against loyalists who served the wrong master at the wrong hour. Decrees from high lords that traded millions of lives as bargaining chips, justified not by faith, but by convenience. Each page tears another piece from the oath. Each revelation feels like a blade carving into the very marrow of belief. The Inquisitor who entered the archive still clung to a shred of loyalty, a desperate hope that their doubts were born of weakness. The one who emerges carries something far darker, knowledge that cannot be unlearned, and knowledge is the purest form of heresy. From this moment onward, their fall is not a possibility. It is a certainty. The certainty settles like ash in their lungs. Once inhaled, it cannot be expelled. Every word from the archives burns behind the Inquisitor's eyes, ghosting across their vision, even as they return to the rituals of command. When a governor kneels, they see the tally of governors executed for political expedience. When an ecclesiarch's emissary delivers a blessing, they hear the hollow echo of decrees forged to preserve power, not piety. The entire Imperium becomes a mask, and the Inquisitor alone can see the rot beneath. Yet knowledge alone is not damnation. It is what one does with it that carves the path into heresy. For a time, they try to bury it. They kneel before shrines longer, recite litanies until their throat cracks. Order purges with renewed fervor as though excess zeal might scour away doubt. But zeal is only a disguise, and disguises crack. The retinue notices hesitation when none should exist, a shadow in the eyes that once burned with certainty. The Psyker whispers of turbulence in their master's soul. The interrogator keeps more detailed reports, words chosen with care, as though already preparing a dossier for the Ordos. The Inquisitor knows it. They feel the noose tightening, invisible but undeniable. And in that pressure, they make the second transgression. Greater than reading forbidden texts, greater than doubt, they speak. It is not to their retinue, nor to their peers, for such honesty would be suicide. Instead, the words slip into existence during a private interrogation when a trembling prisoner begs for mercy. The accused is a scribe, caught smuggling fragments of a prescribed tome. Not a cultist, not a traitor, merely a desperate scholar who could not turn away from knowledge. By creed, the punishment is simple: fire. By oath, there is no choice. But instead of delivering judgment, the Inquisitor leans close, their voice low enough that even the servo skulls cannot catch it, and asks a question no Inquisitor should ever utter. Tell me what you read. The scribe stares in disbelief, waiting for the trap to spring. Yet when no blow follows, the words spill like a flood. Tales of lost histories, of truths buried beneath layers of propaganda, of contradictions between the Emperor's image and the Emperor's deeds. The Inquisitor listens, and in listening, they cross the line from hunter to heretic. Because to listen is to acknowledge that forbidden words may hold value. To listen is to betray the oath that binds all Inquisitors to silence before heresy. To listen is to plant the first flag in the wasteland of rebellion. When the scribe is finally silenced, not by fire, but by exile into the endless void, their shuttle jettisoned without ceremony, the Inquisitor knows the truth. They have begun their first true heresy, not against the Emperor, but against the machinery of his Imperium. And once begun, heresy does not end. The silence of that shuttle's ejection lingers far longer than the roar of any pyre. It becomes a ghost, haunting every chamber where the Inquisitor stands. No one questions the absence of the scribe. After all, the galaxy swallows the unworthy by the millions each day. But the weight of complicity cannot be erased. The Inquisitor's hands, once steady as steel, now tremble when they sign an execution order. Each quill stroke bleeds more than ink. It bleeds certainty. Soon, silence is no longer enough. What begins as whispered questions grows into private ruminations, and from ruminations into veiled conversations. A line of dialogue here, an insinuation there, with Psykers too untrained to grasp the meaning, with adepts too fearful to assume treachery. Always cloaked, always ambiguous, but present. The words themselves are seeds, and seeds never stay dormant forever. The first to notice is the interrogator. Loyal, sharp-eyed, and bred for suspicion, they are the shadow that trails their master most closely. They begin to catalogue subtle anomalies, verdicts delayed without reason, condemned heretics questioned too long before execution, a peculiar fixation on archives flagged as dangerous but not purged. The interrogator writes, but they do not yet act, for they are torn. The master who raised them from obscurity is also the master whose footsteps now drift dangerously close to damnation. And then, the Inquisitor makes the third mistake. They save a world that should have burned. The planet is small, forgotten by most stellar charts, its surface scarred by half-hearted rebellion. Protocol demands culling, orbital fire to erase the infection before it festers. The Inquisitor orders instead a cleansing that is only partial, sparing thousands whose guilt is uncertain. In truth, they are sparing themselves, unwilling to light another pyre without hearing the condemned voices first, without asking the questions they are forbidden to ask. The report they send to Terra is polished, precise, and false. The rebellion is declared extinguished, the threat purged in its entirety. But lies cannot be perfect. Somewhere in the network of informants, a survivor whispers the truth. Somewhere in the endless vaults of the administratum, a data slate does not match the numbers expected. Somewhere, another Inquisitor notices, and so, the Forsaken's first true shadow is cast. They do not know it yet, but with that one act of mercy, the Inquisitor has written their own death sentence. For the Inquisition does not forgive lies, and it does not forget rebellion. The only question now is not if their fall will be uncovered. It is when. The Inquisitor begins to feel it before any accusation is spoken aloud. A subtle chill that lingers in Vox traffic, a faint hesitation in the voices of peers who once greeted them with iron certainty. Data requests from distant ordos arrive cloaked in routine procedure, but dig deeper than they should. Acolytes exchange glances when they believe their master is not looking, and the interrogator's silence grows heavier than any spoken word. The Forsaken knows the mechanisms of suspicion intimately. After all, they once wielded them. They know the rhythm of how doubt spreads, how it stains reputations long before a formal charge is levied. The Inquisition is not an institution of justice, but of fear, and the mere whisper of corruption is enough to end a career before a tribunal convenes. The Forsaken has seen it 100 times. They know the game. They know its cruelty. But now, for the first time, they are the quarry, and paranoia begins to consume them. Every summons to a conclave feels like a death sentence cloaked in ceremony. Every question from a peer tastes of interrogation. Even the acolytes, those sworn to obedience, are now potential knives in the dark, loyal not to their master, but to the Inquisition itself. For when the Ordos calls, loyalty to one's master is nothing against loyalty to the throne. The Inquisitor's mind becomes a battlefield of rationalizations. Perhaps the half-purges and altered reports can be explained away. Perhaps mercy can be reframed as prudence, leniency as strategy. The Inquisition thrives on deception and half-truths. Surely a skilled tongue can reshape the narrative. Yet beneath those thoughts lies the gnawing truth. The mask is already cracking. Lies can be bent, but they cannot unmake the act of sparing what should have burned. Every moment is a calculation now. Which acolytes to trust, which documents to alter, which records to destroy. The Forsaken is no longer merely straying from the Inquisition's path. They are waging a shadow war against the very machinery they once served. And yet, in the quiet of sleepless nights, one thought claws louder than fear itself. What if the mercy was not a mistake? What if the oath they swore was the lie all along? This is the thought that makes them dangerous, not to the galaxy, but to the Inquisition itself. The storm breaks not with a thunderclap, but with a summons. The Inquisitor receives it upon a data slate, its screen flickering with the embossed sigil of the Ordo. The words are polite, ceremonial, a request for their presence at a conclave to discuss irregularities in recent reports. But the Forsaken knows the truth hidden beneath the ink. No summons is ever benign. To stand before one's peers is to stand before judges, each cloaked in authority, each armed with suspicion sharper than any blade. They prepare in silence, robes are pressed, seals anointed, the aquila polished until it gleams like unbroken faith. Outwardly, nothing betrays their dread, but within, their mind fractures across possibilities. If they attend, they step into the jaws of wolves. If they refuse, they mark themselves guilty before a word is spoken. There is no safe path, only the illusion of choice. The interrogator notices the tension. For years, this loyal shadow has mirrored the master's will, learning the trade of suspicion, execution, judgment. Now their gaze lingers too long, their questions brush too close. "Shall I accompany you, my lord?" they ask, tone sharp as a blade drawn in the dark. The Inquisitor's answer is measured, calm, a dismissal crafted to sound natural. But it is not natural. Nothing is anymore. The conclave itself unfolds in a cathedral hollowed by time, its walls lined with statues of long-dead Inquisitors, whose visages stare down in eternal judgment. Candles burn low, smoke curling like the whispers of the damned. Their peers wait, some familiar, some unknown, all dangerous. Words are exchanged, courteous at first, but beneath every syllable lies accusation. Questions fall like hammer blows. Why was the culling incomplete? Why were casualty numbers altered? Why was a planet declared purged when survivors were later reported? Each inquiry is framed as clarification, but the Forsaken feels the snare tightening. They answer with poise, with the precision of one who has worn the mask for decades. They speak of tactical necessities, of conserving Imperial resources, of errors in administratum data streams. For a time the web holds, but then comes the question that cuts deeper than all the rest. Tell us, Inquisitor, when did you begin to doubt? The chamber falls silent. The statues seem to lean closer, the smoke to thicken. It is not an accusation, not yet, but it is more dangerous than any formal charge. For the Inquisition is not merely a brotherhood of hunters, it is a priesthood of belief. To doubt is to sin. To admit doubt is to burn, the Forsaken answers. Calmly, carefully, words chosen with the precision of a surgeon's knife. Yet even as they speak, they feel the weight of those gazes pressing in, searching for cracks in the mask. The room is not convinced, and as the conclave adjourns, one truth becomes clear. Suspicion is no longer a shadow. It is a blade poised above their neck. The Forsaken departs the conclave with their life intact, but not their freedom. The air of the cathedral still clings to their robes, heavy with incense and unspoken judgment. Every word uttered in that chamber was recorded, dissected, filed away in vaults where even silence becomes evidence. To walk free is not acquittal. It is a reprieve, a window in which the noose is merely being tightened. On the flight back to their vessel, the Inquisitor's reflection in the shuttle's steel bulkhead feels alien. The eyes that stare back are not those of a hunter of heresy, but of the hunted. They know the cycle too well. Suspicion begets surveillance. Surveillance begets discovery. Discovery begets fire. And if their peers cannot yet prove heresy, they will craft a case from the ashes of doubt. The Ordos always finds a reason to burn. Paranoia deepens. Orders come slower. Acolytes hesitate longer before obeying. Vox codes are checked and rechecked, yet still the Forsaken senses intrusion. Data slates display lines of scripture that should not be there. Invocations woven into margins as if mocking. The interrogator grows colder, their loyalty harder to read. Once that bond had been unshakable. Now every pause, every glance feels like a test of loyalty, or a preparation for betrayal. And then, the nightmares begin. At first, they are fragments. Faces of the spared rising in firelight, chanting liturgies of doubt. A world burning despite mercy, its sky split by Imperial warships as millions scream their thanks and their curses. But soon the dreams grow darker, stranger. Voices whispering not in the tongues of men, but in echoes too vast, too patient. They do not name themselves, but they speak with familiarity, with hunger. The Inquisitor wakes in cold sweat, clutching a rosarius that feels heavier each night. Are these visions seeded by guilt, or are they something far worse? Something that has scented weakness and drawn near? In the grim machinery of the galaxy, doubt is not only treason, it is an invitation. Still, the Forsaken does not yield. They bury the fear beneath layers of discipline, maintaining their facade, even as the cracks widen. Yet they cannot escape the truth pressing closer with every day. The first heresy is not the sparing of lives, nor the lies woven into reports. It is the seed planted in their own mind. The possibility that the Inquisition itself may be a greater danger than the heresies it hunts. And that seed, once planted, cannot be killed. The first betrayal is not a strike of the blade. It is quieter, more insidious, the betrayal of trust. The Forsaken begins to notice small absences among their retinue. An acolyte who once served in the archives is suddenly reassigned without explanation. A Vox officer, loyal for years, is transferred to another ship for efficiency. These are not chance movements. They are orchestrations. The Inquisition knows how to strip away layers of protection, piece by piece, until only the target remains exposed. And then there is the interrogator. Once the Inquisitor's most trusted companion, their presence has become suffocating. Questions no longer feel like aid but probes. Their reports are filed too diligently, their notes too precise. The Forsaken can almost see the invisible thread connecting those reports to a conclave scribe, waiting for a slip. Once the interrogator's loyalty was a weapon, now it feels like a noose. It is in this atmosphere of suspicion that the whispers return, not from the conclave, not from acolytes, but from the shadows themselves. They come in dreams, yes, but also in moments of waking stillness. The echo of a voice within the rustle of parchment, the shape of a figure reflected in cracked glass, but absent from the room. These are not hallucinations born of exhaustion. The Inquisitor has seen too much, endured too much, to mistake them. Something else has taken interest. The irony burns like acid. For all their years hunting heresy, for all their sermons about vigilance, they now find themselves in the same place as those they once condemned, standing at the edge of belief and corruption, torn between fear of discovery and the dark allure of forbidden knowledge. But even as these whispers beckon, the Forsaken does not yet surrender. They know the game is tightening. Somewhere among their closest servants lies a traitor, not one lured by chaos, but one loyal to the Inquisition itself. And that betrayal, once revealed, will not be a dream. It will be the first true wound in a life already unraveling. The betrayal reveals itself not with daggers in the dark, but with the soft shuffle of parchment. It begins with a data slate left upon the Forsaken's desk, its screen dim but unlocked, a mistake no acolyte would dare make. On it lies a transcription of their own words, conversations held in private chambers, questions asked only in whispers. The realization is immediate and brutal. Their every hesitation, every flicker of doubt has been catalogued, not by enemies from beyond, but by their own household. The interrogator enters moments later, eyes sharp, tone measured, too measured. They feign ignorance of the slate, but the Forsaken recognizes the trap. To accuse outright is to reveal fear. To ignore it is to invite the knife closer. And so, the game of masks continues. In the days that follow, trust collapses into ash. The Forsaken walks their vessel like a stranger, each corridor echoing with imagined judgment. Acolytes avert their eyes too quickly, bow too deeply, murmur prayers when they think their master cannot hear. It is not respect, it is fear, and fear breeds betrayal faster than any heretical text. Then the fracture widens. Orders are disobeyed, subtly at first, then openly. A target marked for surveillance is executed without command. Supplies vanish from the vaults, redistributed in ways that bypass the Inquisitor's authority. Reports are filed directly to higher Ordo's authorities without consultation. The Forsaken's voice, once absolute, is being eroded from within. And still, the interrogator remains close, always present, always watchful, their loyalty wrapped in layers of ritual propriety. Yet every gesture, every bow feels sharpened by hidden intent. There are moments when the Forsaken can almost hear the echo of future testimony in the interrogator's voice. Words rehearsed for a tribunal that has not yet convened. The Inquisitor knows the truth now. The first betrayal is not the acolytes who shuffle away, nor the administratum clerks who sniff out false numbers. It is the interrogator, the one raised closest, the one trained to inherit, now turned to dismantle. And so, the Forsaken understands. The shadow has become the hunter, and the master has become the prey. But even prey can bite. The confrontation does not erupt in fire or blood. It comes in silence, as so many endings do. The Forsaken finds the interrogator waiting in the strategium, where star maps glow across the vaulted chamber, and the hum of the ship's reactor thrums like a heartbeat. They stand at ease, not kneeling, not saluting, their hands folded behind their back as though they already command the vessel. The insolence is subtle but unmistakable. Words are exchanged first, measured, deliberate, both sides circling like predators unwilling to show the first sign of weakness. The interrogator speaks of loyalty to the Imperium, of duty above all else, their voice calm but weighted with accusation. The Forsaken counters with questions, turning phrases inside out, demanding proof, demanding names, demanding loyalty. But in every exchange, the truth bleeds through. The interrogator is no longer theirs. They are the Inquisition's creature now, and their master's shadow no more. Then comes the blade, not drawn, but spoken. I have prepared my testimony. The words hang in the air heavier than any weapon. They are not a threat. They are a sentence already written. With them, the Forsaken sees the future unfold. Summons to terror, chains upon their wrists, questions sharpened into spears, and finally, the pyre. Something breaks inside the Inquisitor in that moment. Not fear, not anger, but a colder realization. There will be no salvation through loyalty, no redemption through obedience. The very act of being questioned has already condemned them. The interrogator is not offering betrayal. They are delivering inevitability, and so the Forsaken does not lash out, not yet. Rage would give the game away, and they are not ready to die. Instead, they smile. A small, weary smile, the kind that once disarmed heretics in the last seconds before execution. Then make certain your words are perfect, they murmur. For imperfection is heresy. The interrogator flinches, just slightly. And in that flinch, the Forsaken finds the sliver of hope they need. For if testimony is to damn them, then perhaps silence or death might yet deliver reprieve. The mask remains intact, but beneath it, a new resolve hardens. The master will not go quietly. The prey has teeth, and the hunter may yet bleed. The decision comes not in fury, but in the stillness of the void. The Forsaken sits alone in their sanctum, the chamber lit only by the faint glow of lumen strips and the flicker of a dying incense stick. Voxcasters hum softly in the walls, relaying fragments of distant prayers, fragments of orders, fragments of screams from 1,000 light years away. All of it washes over them like static, meaningless against the weight of choice pressing upon their chest. To submit is to burn. The interrogator's testimony, sharpened with the authority of the Ordos, will cut through any defense. No matter the eloquence of their tongue, no matter the brilliance of their lies, the conclusion has already been written. The Inquisition does not forgive suspicion. It consumes it, purges it, makes an example. If they submit, they will die as all others do. Shackled, nameless, ashes in the wind. To strike is heresy. To silence the interrogator, to unmake the witnesses, to erase the evidence. It is the path of traitors and apostates, the very path they have spent their life condemning. It would sever forever the last threads tying them to the Imperium, but it would also buy them freedom. And freedom, in this cursed age, is a weapon more dangerous than any sanction. The Forsaken turns the Rosarius in their hand, its weight mocking them. Once, it was a shield of faith. Now it is nothing but a reminder of chains. They close their eyes, and in the dark behind their eyelids the visions return. The spared faces, the whispers, the shadows that call themselves nothing yet promise everything. They hear them more clearly now, like voices waiting just beyond the veil, urging them forward, telling them that chains can be broken if only they are willing to pay the price. And so, in that chamber of smoke and silence, the choice is made. The Forsaken will not submit. They will defy, but every defiance demands its tithe. The first price will be blood, the blood of their own. For in a galaxy where loyalty is a weapon, the only way to survive is to kill it before it kills you. The Inquisitor rises, robes falling like the wings of a carrion bird, and whispers a prayer not to the Emperor, but to the silence between stars. The price of defiance has been set, and the first debt will be collected tonight. The ship is quiet, but not still. Vibration hums through its steel bones, the endless thrum of engines carrying them through the void. The Forsaken moves through its corridors like a wraith, robes trailing in shadows, every step measured, every breath controlled. Once these halls echoed with unquestioned authority, now they are a hunting ground, and the Inquisitor knows that both hunter and hunted walk here. The first target is chosen carefully. Not the interrogator, not yet. Their death would be too loud, too final, too difficult to conceal. No, the Forsaken strikes at the weaker link, the acolyte who dared file a report directly to the Ordos without their master's sanction. A minor act of defiance, perhaps, but enough to prove where loyalty has shifted. And in betrayal, even the smallest fracture becomes a fatal wound. The acolyte is found in the archive vaults, hunched over a data slate, the pale glow painting fear across their face as they catalogue numbers that no longer match. They do not hear the Inquisitor enter. They do not sense the shadow until it falls across their screen. When they look up, it is too late. The Forsaken does not roar, does not curse, does not condemn. The blade slides cleanly, wordlessly, across the throat, silencing treachery in a single motion. Blood spatters against the shelves, soaking into parchment older than empires. The acolyte's eyes are wide with disbelief. Not fear of death, but betrayal of faith. The realization that the master they served has become something else. The Inquisitor watches the light fade from those eyes and feels nothing. No triumph, no sorrow, only necessity. This is the price of defiance, and it must be paid without hesitation, without regret. Hesitation is weakness, regret is death. The body is incinerated in a purification chamber, its ashes scattered into the recycler, indistinguishable from the dust of 1,000 other purges. The report of their absence will be easy to forge, a reassignment, a transfer, a quiet erasure from the ledger of the living. The Inquisition is built on lies. One more will vanish without question, but the act is not without consequence. The whispers return, louder now, curling in the edges of the Inquisitor's mind like smoke, praising, urging, hungering. They speak not in words, but in sensation, a tide of approval that feels almost holy. Almost. The Forsaken grips the Rosarius tighter, feeling the false weight of faith in their palm, and knows the truth. Every step deeper into defiance drags them closer to something far darker than rebellion. But they cannot stop. Not yet. The Interrogator remains the heart of the storm. Every acolyte may falter, every record may be forged, every report may be burned. But as long as the Interrogator breathes, the blade of the Ordos hovers above the Forsaken's neck. They are the living archive of doubt, the one who has walked closest, seen too much, learned too well. Their testimony alone could doom their master, and worse still, they are already preparing it. The Forsaken knows this. The Interrogator knows this. The silence between them has grown sharper than any weapon. It begins like ritual, a summons to the strategium for a late-hour review of reports. Candles burn low, their light throwing skeletal shadows across star charts and tactical glyphs. The Interrogator stands waiting, posture disciplined, hands clasped behind their back. Their expression is calm, unreadable, carved from the same stone as judgment itself. The Inquisitor studies them, searching for weakness, searching for doubt. Once there was loyalty in those eyes, fierce, unbreakable, unquestioning. Now there is only calculation. Not hatred, not fear, calculation. The Interrogator has already chosen their side, and it is not their master's. Words come first, as they always do. The Forsaken asks questions, veiled, subtle, the kind designed to lure truth into the open. The Interrogator answers with poise, never slipping, never faltering. Their loyalty is to the Imperium, they say, to the God Emperor, to the eternal vigilance that keeps humanity alive. Their voice never wavers, but beneath every syllable is an unspoken promise. I will testify. I will end you. The Forsaken feels the whispers coil in their mind again, urging, hissing. End it now. Sever the chain. Take what freedom still remains. Their hand drifts toward the weapon at their belt. Not consciously, not yet, but as if guided by the shadows themselves. But hesitation lingers. To kill the Interrogator is not the same as killing an acolyte. It is not a quiet erasure. It is open war. Their death would echo. Their absence would ignite suspicion far louder than any report. Yet to leave them alive is to walk willingly toward the pyre. The room is silent, but for the hum of star maps and the soft rasp of breath. The Inquisitor weighs blade against mask, loyalty against survival, and in that silence, they understand the truth with brutal clarity. The Interrogator is no longer their protege. They are their executioner in waiting. The choice cannot be delayed forever. Sooner or later, the blade must fall, and when it does, one of them will not leave this chamber alive. The chamber is prepared. The Forsaken Inquisitor has chosen the battlefield with care, a sanctum that once served as a reliquary, long abandoned, its walls etched with the prayers of forgotten scribes. Dust chokes the air, and fractured saint statues lie toppled like corpses. It is a fitting place for judgment, stripped of glory, steeped in silence. The Interrogator arrives at the summons without hesitation. Their boots strike stone in measured rhythm, their eyes sharp and searching. Every step the echo of duty. They carry no escort, no guard. They do not need one. They believe their cause shields them, that righteousness itself will hold their master in check. The Forsaken watches them enter, robes pulled like shadow around their seat. The air feels heavy, as though the chamber itself knows blood will be spilled here. You have grown bold, the Inquisitor says, their voice low, a rasp through incense smoke. Too bold, the Interrogator does not flinch. I have grown loyal to the throne, to the Imperium, to the truth you abandoned. The words cut sharper than any blade, but they are expected. The Forsaken leans forward, eyes burning. You would condemn me with half-truths and whispers. You would see my life weighed against rumor? I would see your life weighed against evidence, the Interrogator replies coldly. And it is evidence I have gathered, Master. Enough to burn you. For the briefest moment, silence reigns. The flickering lumen above sputters, threatening darkness. And in that void, the whispers surge again. Oily, insistent, pressing against the Inquisitor's thoughts like a tide. End them, silence them, take your freedom in their blood. The Inquisitor rises slowly, their hand drifts toward their weapon. The interrogator notices, of course they do, but their own hand does not move. Not yet. This is not ambush, not duel. It is confrontation, trial by will before it becomes trial by steel. You think yourself righteous, the Forsaken says, voice hardening. But you are a child playing at judgment. The Inquisition is no throne of justice. It is a knife in the dark, and you would turn it against me. The interrogator finally steps forward, eyes unwavering. No, I would turn it toward truth. You are already lost, and I will not follow you into shadow. The words strike like a hammer blow, final, irrevocable. There will be no turning back. The chamber holds its breath, and then, at last, steel clears its sheath. The first strike is not steel, but sound. The interrogator's voice rises in a litany, a war prayer spoken through clenched teeth, syllables of high Gothic carried like a weapon. The chamber trembles with the force of it, echoes colliding against fractured statues, breaking the silence into shards. It is not for the Forsaken that they chant. It is for themselves, to drown doubt, to call strength from the throne. But the Forsaken is no stranger to such litanies. They cut through the prayer with a roar and lunge forward, blade arcing through the dim light, its edge hissing as if eager for flesh. The interrogator meets it with a parry, steel clashing against steel, sparks falling like dying stars onto the broken floor. The duel is not elegant. It is brutal, fueled by years of trust shattered into rage. Every strike carries memory, a lesson taught, a secret shared, a bond betrayed. The chamber rings with each impact, the sound of loyalty being torn apart. The Forsaken fights like a predator cornered, every blow laced with fury and desperation. Their movements are heavier now, slower than the interrogator remembers, but no less lethal. For each faltering step, whispers in their skull howl encouragement, feeding strength, urging slaughter. The interrogator, younger, faster, holds the edge in speed, but not in experience. They fight with precision, calculated thrusts aimed not at victory but at survival. Each narrow dodge, each block is a reminder. This is their master, the one who taught them to wield blade and fire, to interrogate truth from silence. To kill, steel screeches against steel, then tears through cloth and flesh. The interrogator staggers as a shallow cut blooms red across their arm, but their grip does not falter. They press forward, striking with renewed ferocity, each movement a declaration. I will not break. The Forsaken snarls, eyes burning with something more than rage. Do you not see? The Imperium uses us, discards us, leaves us hollow. Why die for a throne that never sees you? The interrogator's blade locks against theirs, faces inches apart. Their voice is steady, though sweat and blood blur their vision, because someone must still stand for it, even when the Inquisitors fall. The words ignite the air, and with a desperate shove they break the lock, driving the Forsaken back against a shattered saint statue. Dust cascades down like grey snow, cloaking both in the ashes of forgotten faith. And in that moment, as the Forsaken steadies themselves, a choice carves its way forward. The duel could end here, in surrender, or it could plunge into a final, irreversible act. The chamber waits, silent but for the drip of blood on stone. The chamber is a crucible now blood steel, and silence bound together into one terrible moment. The Forsaken stands against the ruined saint, robes torn, blade trembling in their grasp. Their breath rasps like broken machinery, every exhale thick with defiance and something darker. The interrogator, though bloodied, remains poised, their sword angled with grim precision. Neither moves. Neither blinks. The duel has burned down to its final ember. It is the Forsaken who speaks first, their voice raw, scraping against the stone walls like claws. You cannot win. Even if you strike me down, you will inherit nothing but my curse. They will not honor you for killing me. They will burn you beside me. That is the truth of our order. The interrogator's chest rises and falls, ragged with exhaustion, but their gaze does not falter. Then let the flames take me. Better to burn with truth than to live with your lies. The words strike harder than any blade. The whispers coil tighter within the Forsaken's skull, shrieking for murder, for one last desperate cut to silence the voice of judgment. Fingers tighten on the hilt. Muscles coil. The moment teeters on the edge of eternity. Then steel arcs. It is not the Forsaken's. The interrogator moves with sudden clarity, as though the Emperor himself has guided their hand. Their blade pierces through the Forsaken's chest, sliding past bone, through the remnants of a heart blackened by secrets. The Forsaken gasps, eyes wide with shock, but there is no scream, only a low, broken whisper. I only sought to know. More. Blood spills in thick rivulets down their robes, soaking the cracked floor. Their blade falls, clattering into silence. The interrogator lowers them slowly, almost reverently, against the shattered saint statue, where they slump like an offering laid upon the altar of ruin. For a heartbeat, the chamber is still. The whispers that once gnawed at the Forsaken fall silent at last. There is only dust, blood, and the dying breath of a master undone. The interrogator stands alone now, weapon dripping, chest heaving. Victory tastes like ash. They have slain the one who shaped them, the one who damned them, and in doing so have bound their fate to shadows. Because the Forsaken's last words were not wrong. The Inquisition will not forgive. It will not weigh loyalty against heresy. The interrogator has crossed the Rubicon, and though their cause was righteous, their hands are stained beyond cleansing. The chamber feels smaller now, suffocating as though the walls themselves mourn the act. And yet within that suffocation, a flicker remains. Not triumph, not absolution, but defiance. The Forsaken is dead, but their legacy is not. The reliquary lies in silence, its dust forever marked by blood and betrayal. Where once prayers were carved into stone, now only the memory of a duel lingers, echoing in shadows that will never fade. The Forsaken Inquisitor is no more, their body crumpled among the ruins of saints who themselves could not save a broken Imperium. Yet death does not erase the truth they unearthed. Their whispers of corruption, of chains disguised as duty, still coil in the mind of the one who struck them down. The interrogator walks away from the chamber, each step heavier than the last, burdened by the weight of survival. They are not celebrated. They are not vindicated. They are a ghost in waiting, hunted not by demons, but by the very masters they once served. Perhaps that is the true curse of the Inquisition. Not death, but the endless erosion of loyalty until nothing remains but suspicion, betrayal, and silence. One falls, another takes their place, and the cycle continues. And yet, in the stillness, one question burns brighter than all others. Was the Forsaken Inquisitor truly damned, or did they glimpse a truth too dangerous for the Imperium to bear? If you've walked with me through this story, through shadows, steel, and ashes, then help keep the Grimdark alive. Like this video, share it with those who crave the hidden corners of Warhammer lore, and subscribe so these tales of dread and ruin never fade into silence. Because in the 41st millennium, there are no heroes, only the stories we choose to remember.